And so I'm really glad to be here. I like to remind people that I'm typically sitting down there where you are. See if I can get this to come up a little higher and stay up here. I'm typically sitting where you are, and I'm not a minister, I'm a lawyer. And Stan knows that. Stan in the back knows that. You know me as an attorney, I think, a little bit.
I'm blessed, dude. I'll put my hat back.
That's okay. Yeah. There you go. You can definitely do that for me. I am not a minister, but I am kind of sort of like a minister in that I'm friendly and approachable, relatively so. And I'm not like a lawyer anymore because I don't send out bills. And so that's a good thing. I'm here as a reminder that the conference does provide this service to people, that if you have an interest in helping out the work, and if you would like to help the work somehow after you've taken care of your family and then taken care of those that you love and who are with you at home, and taking care of your own needs, if there is something left over and you want to help out the work, we're glad to talk to you about how to do that. Specifically, it can be powers of attorney, it can be wills and things related to that. All those kinds of things we'd be glad to help talk to you about.
I'm not
The verse that I was going to focus on today is in Genesis. And so if you have your Bibles, I'm going to read quite a bit of Genesis 24. But the verse that I specifically picked out was 24, verse 45 and verse 46. And if you find that in your version, take a look. Genesis 24, verses 45 and 46. Before I had done speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew. I said to her, "Pray, let me drink." She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, "Drink, and I will give your camels drink also." So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Title of the talk today is "See to It," which is a phrase from the version of the Bible that I've been reading here lately. I found one of my mom's Bibles the other day on the bookcase, and I like the way this story reads with that phrase when we come to it in Genesis 24, "See to it." This is the Revised Standard Version, and I've been enjoying just a little bit different twist on some familiar Bible stories. So one of my most favorite things about church is Sabbath school, and I've been blessed already today to be in Sabbath school and to hear the thoughts of the various members here and to share a little bit. And I wanted to mention that in the Sabbath school that I normally attend, there was a lady there the other day who shared a formula that I thought was really helpful. And I would kind of like to do that today with this story in Genesis 24. She said, every time I read a story in the Bible, every time I read a verse, I look for three things. I look for God in that story. I look for God in the verse. Somehow, where is He in there? Number one. Number two, I look for me in the story. What do I identify with? What makes sense to me? Where can I see myself in these characters or in that verse or series of verses? And then lastly, number three, what difference does it make? What difference does this story make to me today in Walla Walla, Washington in 2018? So that's my formula today as we look at Genesis 24. And along the way, I've got 3 slides. Tom is going to help me out. We have a geography lesson, and that's up on the screen already. Number 1, a geography lesson. Number 2, an illustration from the life of crime, the world of crime. A little story from there. And then lastly, I know some of you are good at math, and I see some devices out there. A math problem. A little geography, a little criminal illustration, and some math. So if you have Genesis 24 out there, I would take a look at it and follow along. This is how it goes in Genesis 24, starting at number 1. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his house, who had charge of all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac." The servant said to him, "Perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came?" Abraham said to him in verse 6, "See to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and swore to me, 'To your descendants I will give this land,' he will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there." So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. So where do I see God so far in that story? I see him in the beginning there. It says God had blessed Abraham in all things. A lot of times we think of blessings in terms of money, bank accounts, numbers. But I'd suggest to you that there were other things that Abraham was enjoying by this time in his life. He's got health. He's still a healthy fellow. If you read ahead after this chapter, even after Sarah is gone, he remarries and he has 6 other children, I think 5 or 6 other children. He's healthy. He's at peace. There was some violence in earlier parts of the story in Genesis, but there is peace in his life and in his neighborhood at the time of this part of the story. He's got family, his son, Isaac, the one that took so long to arrive, but it was so important. And he's got relationships, I'd suggest, with his family and with his God, and with Eliezer, this person who's helping him out here in chapter 24. Relationships. I see God at work here too, in that his servant is on the same page with him. The servant doesn't say, well, "What do you mean God will help find some person way, way far away from here for Isaac, your son?" He jumps right in with it and goes with it and talks about the woman. What if we get there and find her and she doesn't want to come hundreds of miles from, this will be our geography lesson, way up there at the top of the map, Haran, that neighborhood, not too far from Nineveh, over there on the east. What if she doesn't want to come all the way from up there down to Bethel and Hebron and Beersheba, where Abraham was living at the time? But Abraham is witnessing to his servant about this. He's reminding him, well, the God that created the heavens and the earth, the Lord, the God of heaven and of the earth, in verse 3. A little bit of a testimony. This isn't just any old God. This is the Creator, the one who made it all and is in charge of it all. Eliezer seems to accept that God has the right person in mind, and they talk in practical terms about whether they can get her to come come back home with him. There's this swearing by the Lord. I see God there. I don't think we do that nowadays. It sounds a little bit personal. It's hand under the thigh business. But I take that to mean, for our purposes, that it was really important for Abraham. He didn't just ask him. He wanted to do something to let Eliezer know that this was a big, big deal. I really want you to go and find the woman that God has in mind. And then lastly, there's this, the part about the angel. Abraham tells him, yes, it's a long ways away. Yes, you've got to go far, far distances. But the God that I just reminded you all about, the one who promised us certain things, the one that I trust, is going to send his angel ahead of you. And this is where I need to mark some of these things so I can find them quickly. Send his angel ahead of you. This is in verse 7. Send his angel before you. And so it's all planned. You'll have a helper on the way. The angel will go before you. So far, so good in the story. Where do I see me in this story? Well, old. Abraham is old, and I'm thinking, well, I'm definitely not as young as I used to be. This is the reference to this particular Bible. In the beginning, the opening pages of it, my dad had written to Mom here in 1960, July 14, 1960. So I'm doing the arithmetic, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm getting older. All right, that was a long time ago. That was her birthday in 1960. I was not one yet. My sister was on the way. But Dad gave this Bible to Mom. And so in terms of old, it's relative. You know, some of us are younger than me. Some of us are a little older than me. But time is passing. And Abraham is realizing, as I do as an older person, that time is limited. You don't wake up anymore saying, I'm almost 60. I can hardly wait till my 60th birthday. You know, if you're a child, you say, I'm almost 10. I'm almost 21. Something like that. As you get older, you don't think that way. And it begins to be more or less like a baseball game. Maybe it's beginning to be the 9th inning, or it's, in golf terms, it's the back 9, you know, it's the 15th hole, 16th hole. There isn't a lot of time left when you wake up every day. Abraham is thinking in those terms. Life is passing by, and I can identify with that. I like this too, that he asks for help. As an attorney, one of the things I really appreciated was being able to talk to other lawyers in our office about problems. We would have a meeting every week at Claret's up the street, and you know, if you had a really hard case, you could ask the guys and girls in the office at that time, have you ever had a case like this? My client did this or did that. The judge did this to us. The judge said that. What do I do about that? I can't find any case law. I can't find any statute. I don't know what to do. And it was wonderful to sit around and have help from 3 or 4 other attorneys. When you put all the years together, it was 100 years of experience sometimes, sitting around the table there at Claret's. And it was really helpful when you were stuck to have a helper. And so I identify with that. Abraham's he's not young spring chicken anymore. Can't travel necessarily for hundreds of miles to go find somebody for Isaac, but he's got a helper in Eliezer. And I like that. I like the part, what if she won't go? Lawyers ask questions. And sometimes it makes clients uncomfortable, sometimes it irritates witnesses, sometimes it irritates judges and jurors, but that's all we can do is ask questions. We don't get up and give a talk and tell people what we think and what we want them to do. We have to ask questions, and then the witnesses put on the evidence. And it's very normal for a lawyer to say to a client, well, have you thought about this? What if you do that? What if then that happens? Did you think about that? And what if that over there comes to pass? Then what will you do? And so I like it that Eliezer says, right off the bat, what if she doesn't want to go? There's a scale, I think, on that map there, 200 miles down toward the lower right. And by the time you go all the way up there toward Haran and come all the way back down, pretty much 1,000 miles. It's not like you can hop in the car, go on an airplane, call on the phone, talk to home. Hey, any girls up there that might be interested in Isaac? No, they got to go up there in person. And I like it that Eliezer's practical and he's asking questions. How's this going to work? What if she doesn't want to come? What difference does this make to me? I guess I think I like this part right off the bat, that it's okay to ask questions. God has a plan, and I've figured out what the plan was. That's a big step right there. But then it's okay to ask a question or two. Well, what if this doesn't work out the way that the angel has prepared? Then what? Do I compromise? Do we pick a girl from this neighborhood after all? Do I take your son way back up to the top of the map there? No. See to it. I looked at some of the other versions. I think the King James says, beware. Abraham says, beware. Don't do that. You think of beware of the dog now. We don't say that in common language very often, but beware of doing that. Do not go back. That is not plan B. It's not to compromise. So picking up then with verse 10, Genesis 24:10. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And so I see Mesopotamia there, sort of in an angle underneath the Fertile Crescent label there. That's where Eliezer goes, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women go out to water and draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, grant me success today, I pray thee, and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I'm standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the maiden to whom I shall say, pray, let down your jar that I may drink. And who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have chosen for my servant Isaac. By this I shall know that thou hast shown steadfast love to my master. Where do I see God so far in that part of the story? Well, he had a safe trip, a few hundred miles, camels. Think of all the things that could happen, by the way. Somebody could have attacked them. They had a bunch of goodies, stuff, nice stuff with them. Somebody could have attacked them out in the middle of nowhere as they made that trip. There aren't local police around ready to help if there's trouble. There's no service station if the camel gets sick or breaks down, so to speak, and they didn't get lost, and they didn't get hurt by some accident. They got there successfully. I see God at that step. And I see God when he's asking for a sign. You know, here I am, parked at this well. Now what? There's all these girls here. What do I do next? I need a sign. I need a sign. And he asks God in his heart for a sign. Where do I see me in this part of the story? There's about 2 or 3 things here. Took 10 camels. And those of you with math expertise be keeping track of some of these numbers. He takes 10 camels, and I'm thinking, okay, they got to have one to bring Rebecca back, as we know how this story ends. They got to bring the girl back if she wants to go. And 2 or 3 or 4 of them need to travel there, and they're taking stuff with them, and they got to have food, and maybe there's some water, and so yeah, so maybe there's safety in numbers out in the middle of nowhere. If there's 10 of us, that sounds practical, sounds secure. And there's some planning here. There's some planning in terms of a story from the world of crime. he doesn't just go into town and wander around aimlessly. I used to have clients who would say, it's not fair that the cops were waiting outside the bar and saw me stumble a little bit, and then drive halfway over the curb when I left, and then stop me right away. Isn't that unfair somehow? But an illustration anyway from the life of crime is our next slide, Tom. I looked this up because I'd heard this quote many times and I wasn't sure if it was true, but I'd heard of Willie Sutton. And Willie, if you might remember, was a famous bank robber. And he's known for a quote about why he did that. He got caught eventually, and somebody from the Saturday Evening Post went to interview him in jail. And he thought, well, there must be some deep-seated reason for this. This guy's been robbing banks left and right. He must have liked a girl whose banker was a dad, and then she turned him down, and so he's mad at banks, and so he robs them. Or maybe he didn't get a loan. Some banker ripped him off and didn't give him money and mistreated him, so now he's angry at banks. So the interviewer went to the jail and interviewed him at the jail and basically said, so, why do you do that? And as I read the article, the author described his reaction with this kind of a reaction of, duh. I rob banks because that's where the money is, okay? That's where the money is. And I couldn't help but think of that when I thought of Eliezer. He's going to the well at the time of the evening when all the ladies come out. He didn't go somewhere aimlessly elsewhere. He knew that this is what the girls do at the end of the day. And all the women of town come out to the well. That's where he went. It's efficient. What difference does that part of the story make to me? Well, I just like the idea that as a result of this, he prays, I'll know, God, that you are kind to my master. It's not that, wow, my boss will be happy, he'll reward me, I'll have success, I'll have something financial. I love it that you, God, will show kindness to my master by granting my prayer. So picking up with one last section of this story in verse 15, before he had done speaking, prayer's not even over. Behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar upon her shoulder. So just picture this. It's not plastic, it's a jar, and it's on her shoulder. The maiden, verse 16, was very fair to look upon, a virgin whom no man had known. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, Pray, give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, Drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw for your camels also until they have done drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Verse 21, the man gazed at her in silence to see whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. Where is God in that? Well, even before the prayer is done, before he had done speaking, I'm thinking of the words, I'm praying, I'm asking God for something. Even before I've gotten the words out in my mind, the answer's there. Rebecca's right there. And I like the part that it's a silent prayer. He doesn't pray out loud. It's something he was thinking in his mind. Nobody else would know. Nobody has to know what our prayers are. We can communicate with God that way. He doesn't need to have us speak out loud. There's nothing wrong with that, but he can tell too when we're thinking a prayer. I love that part. Where do I see me in this story? Well, here's where I really, really wish that I was like Rebecca. You want to add up her characteristics here. She's observant. She sees this guy over at the well who doesn't look like he's from around here. And he's got all these camels who look like they might be really thirsty. And so she's kind, and she's friendly, and she is helpful. And she's got a job to do. She's down there getting stuff for the family, but she's thinking of somebody else, not just her. I used to work at the grocery store in Spokane at Rosars, and it just irritates me no end now. I go into a grocery store and people don't even look up and they say, paper or plastic? Or they say, Washington or Oregon. They don't say, hi, how are you? Hey, Robert, how's it going? I haven't seen you for a while. Hey, there's no, it's like, it's just business. That's right. And so I like it that Rebecca is not that way. It's almost as if someone at the grocery store nowadays were to say, well, I see you just drove in from Seattle. The car's really dirty. Do you want me to wash the car for you? I can take the groceries out for you. You look really tired. Do you need something to drink? Something very helpful. She's quick. She's speedy. I can't help but think that she's got some energy like a cyclist would be, or some sort of aerobic fitness, because over and over again this story, she's running, she's doing things quickly. It's not, I gotta help this bum over here, by the well. She is active, she's full of energy, and she's helpful. This is where slide number 3 comes up, Tom. I wanted to know, as I thought about camels, and I thought about 10 of them, I started to think, now, how much does one of those things drink? And so a little research led to the answer. A typical camel can drink 50 gallons of water in 3 minutes. And so depending on how thirsty they were, this is where you need to do some math for me. There are 10 camels. Let's say Eliezer ran them on empty, so to speak, and just coasted into town. They're all really thirsty. And she's volunteered to get water for all of them. Let's say there's 10 and they can drink 50 gallons. How much does 1 gallon of liquid weigh? That was my next thought. 8.3, I think I've got it in my notes here. 8.36 pounds. 1 gallon, 8.36 pounds. Jar, it wasn't light. How much does a jar weigh? Back and forth from the well to the trough with the jar. How big was that? 3, 4 gallons, 5 gallons maybe? That'd be pretty heavy. 5 gallons times 8.36 pounds. You can start figuring, that's like 50 pounds on your shoulder. Lana the other day asked me to get some things from Home Depot, and I went down there and I looked at them, and I'm thinking, well, I can lift these things up, put them in the truck. I'm looking at the numbers. It says 60 pounds each. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask the guy to help. Sure enough, they bring them all out to the truck, and the back end of the truck goes down like this, and the front end goes up like this. And I drove it home, and there were only 20 of them. I think we got 20, 60 pounds each, 1,200 pounds. It took me a long time to put those in the wheelbarrow. I didn't carry them on my shoulder one at a time. Take them into the backyard, come back, get another one. That took a long time. That was only 1,200 pounds. The math, anyway, anybody have a number? 50 gallons, 10 camels, 8.36 pounds per gallon. It's over 4,000 pounds if they were really, really thirsty. I just wish that I was that helpful and that kind to people. I thought of the VeggieTales story, Queen Vashti. She tells the king to make his own sandwich, I think, if you listen closely, and that's how she got into trouble. Rebecca was not like that. You get your own water from the well, right? She was really a helpful person. Well, where does all this make a difference for me today? I have 3 things to conclude on this. Number 1, today might be a really important day. My first boss used to say, if it's not on my calendar, then it doesn't exist. This was in the law office. Meaning, he didn't want to miss a court deadline or a client appointment under any circumstances. But what about Rebecca's appointment with Eliezer? She had no idea when that day started. Get up, do the chores, get the water at the well with the rest of the girls. What if she had ignored Eliezer? Just said paper or plastic. Who will I meet today? Tomorrow? How will I behave? Will I have regrets? What did people say about me? I think every appointment that we have can be a divine appointment. Number 2, God's interested in our relationships. We don't pick our kids as spouses nowadays. Travel, find a girl, bring her home. But we can choose some of their friends, at least when they're little. And we can choose our own friends now. The Bible says God blessed Abraham in all things, including, as I read it there, his love life. Sarah was so pretty that the neighbor kings wanted to date her. Remember that part? He was afraid of that, so he told people that she was his sister. God blessed him in his business life. We didn't read this, but in chapter 24, verse 35, as Eliezer retells the whole story to the family after Rebekah invites him home, they recite the list of how Abraham has flocks and herds, silver and gold, men servants and maidservants, camels and donkeys. Got a lot of stuff. God had blessed him in his social life. The neighbors recognized him as a leader and offered him free land when Sarah died. Here, you don't have to pay. I mean, I think he did pay. But ultimately, they respected him and had so much respect for him as a leader that they offered free land to him. Right this second, God has people he wants us to meet and places he wants us to go. And they're not secret. The Bible says, pay attention and listen. This is from Exodus 23, a good one to mark if you don't have it marked already. Exodus 23:21 says, behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place which I have prepared. Give heed to him and hearken to his voice. Do not rebel against him. Somebody we can actually listen to and know about, according to that Bible promise there. Finally, number 3, we are blessed and we bless others through our relationships. There's a formula, I think, in this story. There's a mechanism. Abraham and Eliezer saw it and they followed it. God did X. Brought me here, promised land down there at the lower left. He did X. He promised more. He promised Y, whatever that might be. We've got to see to it that Z happens. X and Y and Z. Seeing and knowing what God has done is easier when looking back. Hindsight can be very well 20/20 on this point. When Eliezer repeated every single thing about this trip to Rebekah's family, it was all so obvious. We didn't read this either, but a little bit ahead in verse 20, chapter 23. I need to skip back here really quickly. 23, sorry. Just after they ask her if she will come back. This is in verse 50, chapter 24, verse 50. He tells the story. He goes every single step here. Abraham told Eliezer what he wanted. And Eliezer found Rebekah, who told Laban and Bethuel. And what did they say in verse 50? This thing is from the Lord. Even before we say the words for a prayer, sometimes God already knows what we need. And he sends someone special to us, just the one we needed. I can look back at this, and the Bible inscription I read at the beginning reminds me of this with my mom and so forth. My parents could have had a nicer car. They could have had a nicer house. They could have had more vacations, but they sacrificed and sent us, sister and I, to Spokane Junior Academy. and to Upper Columbia Academy. And I met Doug there, who introduced me to Michael, who knew John. And John could have been one of these Oregon or Washington people, but no, he and his wife befriended me, invited me places, they plotted and they planned, and they introduced me to Lana, who is really pretty, like Sarah. And if we hadn't got married, I'd never have met Ron, the best attorney and the best law partner anybody could hope to have. And then I wouldn't be here. Here today is where we're supposed to be.